And in the studio, the president and CEO of Future Vision Energy. Now, this is a guy who's got some real knowledge. We're going to be excited to talk to him. Jason Duncan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
You know, and these LED stuff, if you would, just for folks, we've all heard the term. First off, really, what is it, and what difference does it make, and who cares?
Well, LED technology has been around for about 50 years, and it started with small handheld games, old football games. You guys remember that when we were kids, and computer screen lights. But over the last 5 years or so, LEDs have become mainstream. They're going to general lighting, and you could do just about anything with an LED that you could have done with an incandescent light or a fluorescent light or even a metal halide light. They're about 50% on minimum more efficient. They're going to last about 5 times longer than every light out there. Plus, they don't contain any harmful elements like mercury. They are fully recyclable. So LEDs are the future of lighting. Everybody's going to be going to LEDs eventually.
All right, so you can, I mean, if you've got an incandescent bulb right now, just simple enough, you just put the LED in there, no conversion, no stuff, just
screw it in, just like a normal bulb. Yes.
Just screw it in there. Now, what's the current, Congress has been talking a lot about this energy stuff, and, these things are going to go away, and you're going to have to do this and that. How does that impact what we're going to need to do with LED?
Well, the federal government's been very active in trying to affect the way our lighting options are available to us. For instance, the 100-watt incandescent light bulb has been outlawed, if you will, by
Okay, now when can you not buy one anymore?
Already.
And if there's some left over, you can, but that's it.
When they go out of stock, they're out.
You cannot buy.
Well, it means they're not making them to sell again.
Yeah, that's it. You can't.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then there's also on the fluorescent side, with your linear tube lights that are in most offices and most buildings. If you go in and look up, those are fluorescent tube lights.
Right.
The T12, which is an older style, it's been around for about 70 years. The federal government outlawed the manufacturing of those ballasts as of July 1st of last year.
All right.
So right now, if you have T12s in your business and you have to replace that, you're not going to be able to replace it with T12. Now, the bulbs are still available until they're out of stock. The ballasts will be available until they're out of stock. But we're already seeing our customers saying, hey, we can't even get them anymore. We need to switch to something. Well, you can either go to a different style fluorescent, or you can go ahead and skip on over to the best technology, which is LED.
All right, and just let's say for the average homeowner might have an electric bill of, and this is going to be hard to answer because it depends, but let's just take averages, people who do crazy stuff with electricity and those who don't. But if you had an average bill of, let's say, $200 a month, and maybe you're in a 2,500 square foot house, just, throwing something out there. If someone replaced in the average home all of their incandescents with LED, so you got a $200 electrical bill, is there a way to, what would that, would there be a whole lot of difference? In terms of cost, or what would? Yeah,
there would be a lot of difference. Now, I will say we don't do residential work, so I can only speculate as to what a residential would be in the overall reduction percentage-wise. But in a commercial setting, 75% of a commercial business's electricity expense are on two things: lighting and HVAC. Lighting accounts for the bigger part of that at about 40, 42, 45%, depending on the type of building it is.
42%?
Yeah, 42%. So if you can cut your lighting expense, your electricity expense on lights, and that 42%, if you can cut that by, say, 70% with more energy-efficient lights, you're making a humongous dent in your electricity costs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a neat thing. So,
well, not to mention maintenance too, because you're going to have to maintain the traditional lighting. Has to be maintained because it burns out more quickly, doesn't last as long.
Yeah, now let's talk about that. The difference between an average LED light, if you will, versus incandescent. Just in terms of how long it would last.
It would be fluorescent.
Fluorescent, yeah.
Well, yeah, a fluorescent bulb at best is probably going to last 20,000 hours. That's at best, but most of them are going to last somewhere around 12 to 15,000 hours. An LED, a good LED, now there's some bad stuff out there, but a good high-quality LED light is going to last 50,000 hours. Now, to put that in perspective, if you have your lights on for 12 hours a day, that will last 11 and a half years.
Wow.
11 and a half years.
And you just talk about the bulb. There's also ballast with his fluorescent that can go out also before the bulb.
That's right.
And his LED doesn't take a ballast.
Joe, how will the voltage, how you've talked about different voltages coming into the home, does that affect the LED as like it does the incandescents?
You mean when we talk about residential, we talk about people buying a 120-volt incandescent bulb, and then they blow them because their voltage is 126, say, or 124. So I tell them to go to 130 watts, meaning a volt. So this voltage, LED can be hooked up most of the time 122.77. So I'm not sure the voltage would bother it because we haven't seen it, but we can take a ballast that
So
works either or.
So that wouldn't cause a problem like it does in the incandescent.
No, and then he can talk about this later on these big commercial bills, because you told me before how TVA was paying the big companies. You can name some of these companies if you want, about getting money back for switching to LEDs. I mean, no one's paying you to switch.
There's a tax credit on that? Tell me about that.
Well, the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's a big. It's called EPACT. EPACT is the government likes the
they love
letters.
That stuff, don't they?
Dr. Friday's listening to this, I hope.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on her show. But it was passed in 2008. It's Section 179D of the Internal Revenue Tax Code, and it essentially allows an existing building a credit of up to 60 cents per square foot for doing energy efficiency measures and energy
up to, you're saying
up to 60 cents per square foot.
That's not just lighting.
That's not just lighting. It's anything energy efficient. Now, lighting qualifies, HVAC upgrades qualify.
All right, give me a quick number. So, businesses could be any kind of square footage, but just give me a quick number. Say, hey, here's a deal we did over here. It's got this, it's got that, and this is the kind of tax credit this person would get.
Well, if you look at a 100,000 square foot facility and they get a 60 cent per square foot tax credit. I mean, do that. What's the math on that?
I'm not 60 grand, right?
60 grand. Now, what you do is multiply
in 1 year.
Well, you can do it the first year if you want. You can fully deduct that first year, or you can do it over 5. But the way that is, you take that 60 grand and multiply it times your tax bracket, which is most of the time 35% for a commercial business.
Okay.
So 35% of 60 grand. What is that? $20-something thousand. I'm not good at math. But that is the amount of money they would keep in their pocket rather than sending to Uncle Sam if they do an energy efficiency.
Right.
So it comes off their tax, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's go to Smithville. John, you're live on the Dr. Electric Show. What's going on, John?
Oh, not much. I was wondering about the cost of the LED bulbs. To me, they're so costly, it's not worth buying the things. I just don't see how it can be the savings over a bulb. It normally costs $1.50 and the LED is $10.
Well, you're right. Residentially, LEDs aren't yet there because they're so expensive. So for residentially, you don't keep your lights on as much as a commercial business does. That's why we work mainly in the commercial space.
That.
So yeah, residentially, you're right, sir. It's not right now. It's probably not going to be wise.
How long is it going to take before it is?
Look at here. In the last 12 months, our costs as an LED distributor for 4 different manufacturers, our cost has gone down 20% on the same light. And I say the same light now. The technology is improving. I mean, look at LED and LCD TVs, plasma TVs 5 years ago.
Right.
A 50-inch TV 5 years ago was $9,000, $7,000. Now you can get them for a couple thousand or even under that. So the technology is improving. So for residential space, you're right. It's not there yet.
Now, how do you know? Speaking of that, because here we go. There's different quality of LED.
Right.
So what do you look for to know that what you're buying is really a good product and not the cheap side of that I guess is not going to do very well?
Well, TVA has spent a lot of time in their Energy Right Solutions program, in their incentive program for businesses to reduce kilowatt hour usage by making sure that the LED lights that they incentivize are good, high quality, not cheap Chinese stuff that's going to burn out in a year or two. So there
is some of that on the market.
Oh yes, it's definitely out there. And really, the stuff you buy at the big box stores is falling into that category. It's the cheap stuff. You don't want it, and it's very expensive, but it's cheap quality.
And I wanted to ask you this, if I could, and that is this, Jason. People say, well, you hear about all these energy companies and stuff like that. Can you talk about some of the folks you've done some work for, and what specifically has actually happened once you left? In terms of, it all comes down to the money at the end of the day.
Right. Well, we've been very successful with a lot of commercial businesses here in Middle Tennessee with reducing their overall electric expense. We do that mainly through 2 ways, as we've been talking about: lighting, energy efficient lighting, and energy efficiency upgrades in their air conditioning systems. And we don't install equipment. We leave that to Steve and his company to do stuff like that, but we can make it run more efficiently. But we've got companies. We do a lot of work in the healthcare business. We do a lot of hospitals. We've done distribution centers, factories, retail office spaces, doctors' offices, grocery stores. We can do just about anywhere. We specialize in businesses who have at least $10,000 to $50,000 minimum per month in electricity expenses up. We work with companies that are as high as $250,000 a month in electric expenses.
All right. Now, let's say $100,000 a month is what the electrical expense is. Any success stories there where counties come back and said, hey, this thing is it's now $84,000. is what we're running. I mean, how does that all translate?
Well, you can let's take a hospital for example. We've done we were last year completed the first 2 LED retrofits for hospitals in the state of Tennessee.
The first two?
The first 2 ever.
Ever.
Ever. Yeah. And those hospitals were able to see about $250,000 a year in annual savings in electricity expense.
$250,000.
Yeah. So the project paid for itself in energy expense reduction within a couple of years. So they're getting one hospital was able to get a grant through Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation that was available last year. It's not available this year. They were also able to get the TVA incentive rebate money, which is available for any commercial business, not just hospitals.
Up to 60%?
No, it's actually up to 70% of project costs they can get. And
Gosh, how about that?
And then, of course, there's rebates, incentives, and the EPAC tax credit. So they were able to see a payback of under, I think one of them was under 2 years, one of them was a little over 2, maybe close to 3. So anything under 5 in this economy is amazing.
Pretty good
deal.
You
get a 5-year payback. That's
now,
great.
So how do people get a hold of you and maybe a website they could go to?
Our website is futurevisionenergy.com. That's futurevisionenergy.com, or you can call our office at 732-8074. We're located in Gallatin, Tennessee.
But from Future Vision Energy, just if you could kind of wrap up in 30, 45 seconds or less, this LED thing. What is it, first off? What are LEDs? How long do they last? How expensive are them? And what's the deal?
Well, LEDs are essentially it's an electrical circuit designed to give light, and that's what it does.
Does it give more light than
it can? It can be engineered to do just about anything, any color, any consistency of light, any direction of light. They last about 50,000 hours. There's no harmful elements such as mercury that you've got in a lot of other traditional lighting.
Can you touch them with your hands? They say something like photographic bulbs. You can't get your...
Oh, they're fine.
No problem.
No problems whatsoever. They're 100% safe. And with our installations at the end of life, we even buy them back from you for the price of aluminum. So they're 100% recyclable.
You buy them back.
Yeah, at the end of life, which is going to be a long time, 10, 11 years from now.
Okay.
At most, or at the least.
You still going to be around?
Oh, yeah, I hope so.
Okay.
Man, they got them where they make you look skinnier and younger, too.
That's right.
Yeah.
What do they do for legs?